when it comes to building confidence and just moving forward and doing what you want to do, if there's one thing you can trust about yourself, that's your ability to learn. Because I think this is really important for us to acknowledge this. We are where we are because we are able to learn and pick up new things. And if you can look at it the basic way, like we learn how to walk, how to talk, how to socialize, these are the things that come naturally to us. So this ability for us to learn is very present in each and every one of us. So there's one thing that you can trust yourself about. It's that one ability. So that's kind of what I like to leave people with. So trust
Okay.
that.
Welcome back to the show or anything. I don't do that. I just keep the conversation casual. Um, so yeah, if you want to tell us who you are and what you do, and then we can preface the conversation and dive in from there.
Sure. Well, my name is Snezana. I am an executive coach and a leadership trainer. As a coach, I work with leaders of pretty much all levels and experience, and I help them work on their own challenges, being personal or professional, so that they can grow their team, they can create or build a high performing team, upscale their organization, grow or scale their business, depending on where in leadership they are. So if it's a founder or business owner, clearly they're going to want to work on how to improve their business and grow their business. If they're just a leader as an employee, then they may maybe focus on their own growth or the growth of their team. So as a coach, I help them support, guide them through that growth path. And then as a trainer, I usually work with leadership teams, and I help them be the leaders that they really want to be the professionals that they are striving to be, and then help them, of course, create better teams, create better team cultures, and in that way, they support the organization that they work with as well. Apart from that, I have a little podcast on my own. It's very tiny, very small, but I do talk with other professionals like coaches, consultants, psychologists, therapists on personal and professional growth. And then I love hiking. I like walking. Europe is big on walking. I'm based in Europe, so we do
Okay.
walk around a lot. And then what else? I have a Doberman. She's been with us for about 3 years and super excited about that. And depending on, I'm not sure when the recording is going to show, but I'm a mom to be. So maybe by the time somebody's watching the recording, I'll be a mom as well.
Okay. All
That's
right.
about, that's
Well,
in a nutshell.
congratulations.
Thank you.
So, all right. So executive, you said executive coaching, like executive, I guess like leadership coaching is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
So these, and I know you might have mentioned a little bit of it, but these executives, is this like, are these people that they work at a company? Are they entrepreneurs themselves? Is it their company? Or does
It's
it?
both. It's
Okay.
all really all levels. So I've had clients who are founders or co-founders, clients who run their own businesses and are CEOs or some kind of C-level leadership. Sometimes you'd have a founder who's just founder and not doesn't do much in the business, but they do run
Right.
the business. Sometimes you'd have them very heavily involved, especially if it's a startup or a smaller business, and there's not that much. You don't have a whole C-level of executives there. But then also I've worked with leaders of different corporations. So it's really all levels, even rising leaders, as I call them. So somebody who's just got in a leadership position, maybe they've just given a team to lead, or they're striving to lead a team. This is someone I would definitely work with because each person has their own needs and challenges. And this is usually where coaching steps in. As coaches, we're there to support and guide our clients, regardless of what we focus on. So, really, the idea is what are your needs? What do you want? What are your goals? What are your challenges? And then how can I come in and support you in where you want to be?
Okay. Do you think like, so the difference in the people who are founders or entrepreneurs or people who like work in an executive position, is there like a distinct set of issues that one has that the other doesn't? I mean, is there like a distinct difference in like what their coaching might, what kind of coaching they might need? I know it's leadership coaching, but because I would imagine that maybe the executive who's hired in, there's a lot of external pressure from, whoever owns the place, or if it's the board or whatever it is,
Right.
But then if it's the entrepreneur, it's like, well, they kind of, I mean, it really kind of stems from them. But
There's
I
more
don't know
that
if it's actually
internal pressure.
speculation.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you're really spot on. Usually, if you're an executive working for someone, so you're an employee, then there's I think the struggles can be similar, but the perspective or the depth of them differs. So, for
Mm,
example, as an executive working somewhere, you're still going to be under a lot of pressure or stress, depending on the situation. It is still you have a lot of responsibility. You have a lot of things to think about. You have to lead a team. You have to worry about budgets, project timelines, all of these things in addition to doing your own tasks, creating the strategy, working on your strategy, and then growing as a person as well, because we don't want to get stuck in our own development as we're growing as professionals. If you're a founder, that those types of executives, they have additional things to think about. Like as an executive working somewhere, you may not be thinking about the payroll. As a founder, you
mm,
are thinking, okay, what am I going to do with how am I leading this business forward so that I can create more money, so that I can pay my employees, so that we can grow as a business. So there's on a strategic level, there's a lot more. It is kind of an internal pressure, but if you want to grow as an organization, you have to think about where's money coming from and is it
yeah.
coming? And if it's not, then, do I have enough to support my business for X amount of months or years? Or what is my strategy, growth strategy there? So there's an additional level of administration, legal, um, even HR that founders think about that an executive doesn't necessarily have to worry about, an executive who works in a place. But as you
Right.
can see, the challenges are very similar. It's the pressure, the burnout, feeling overwhelmed, maybe losing focus, maybe feeling stuck, not knowing how to move forward from where you really are. And then,
Hmm.
of course, balancing all of this with life. If you're an executive in any position, there's more responsibility. So we do have our job, our work, but then we also have our life. Some people have families, some don't. But even if you're a single person, you still want to not just work
Right.
24/7. So there's also that challenge of when do I stop working and then do other things? How is that going to impact my business? If I'm a business owner, then I'm thinking, okay, if I go on vacation, maybe I'm not at that level yet where I can completely stop thinking about my business if it's a startup or a really small business. But then how do I still go on vacation and have fun and feel comfortable not working, for 8 or 9 hours? If I'm an executive who's employed, then how do I make sure that while I'm away, everything is running smoothly? Do I have people in place that I trust? Have I built my team that way that they feel independent? Things like that. So the challenges are
Mm.
really similar. It's just, I guess, the level of how deep into it you are and how big of a
Right.
challenge it seems. Does that make sense?
You know, yeah, that does make sense. Excuse me. And one thing that I really, I, it kind of concerns me, or at least I think about it often, is so myself being an entrepreneur and being sort of in that space where like I'm kind of doing a lot of different things,
Hmm.
and I want to build something that ends up being a big thing. But like then I see these other companies and I see how they operate, and these are like huge companies, and there's like I feel like most of the leadership is top down. I don't know how else to a better way to say that, but it's like top down where there's almost like this culture of fear about like doing your job correctly or losing your job. Something happens at the executive level, I almost want to say a command is sent out, but it's like something is said, and that just like trickles down through the organization, and it's like that becomes a culture of how that company operates. And to me, being on the side of a person who's like trying to build something, it's almost like a fear that like I don't want to build something that turns into that. You know what I mean? Now, there's a lot of
Yeah.
different steps between like where I'm at and where that. I mean, we're talking about a company with thousands of employees. You know what I'm saying? But I don't think you have to have 1,000 to have that kind of culture. Like I think if
No.
if you have another person, two executives or whatever to help you run the business once it gets to a certain point, I think that's a very rational thing to be concerned about. But I don't know, man. It's just like I do
It's
think that's like a culture of a company. Now, I don't think that's necessarily the healthiest thing.
not, well, would you enjoy working for that kind of business?
I mean, no, I wouldn't, and I can only imagine. That's probably a very slow downhill slope because there's going to be zero innovation in a company like that. Like people are
It,
going to
it
be
is.
absolutely terrified to come up with any ideas outside of the status quo.
Yeah, yeah, you get what we've seen a lot recently is I think they call it quiet quitting, where people
Yeah,
just kind of drift off and then
right.
eventually leave the business because they feel like they can't share their thoughts, or if they do share something, they show initiative, then everything they get shut down, or some people are afraid of speaking up because they may feel the consequences, like you said, maybe you get fired or you get financial consequences, which is again, we don't like that. But you're right,
Mhm,
it is a culture that we build, and it does start pretty much with your first employee, or even if you have a co-founder, then the two of you, the communication that you guys have, um, the type of interactions that you have, that's what builds it. So if you have a co-founder, then you guys want to make sure your communication is open, very transparent, meaning we get to share the tough things, and we hope that we can talk it through and make sure that we move forward. If we can't move forward, then building a business on this foundation is not going to work. And
mhm.
so it's pretty much, it starts with your first employee. Let's say you hire a VA, a video editor. It doesn't really matter. But the moment you start paying people to help you do something, that's when you need to start thinking, how do I want to communicate with them? How do I want to make them feel when they work with me or for me? What do I want them to be saying? Like, hey, I've got this guy I'm working with and he's XYZ, or I feel this and that way, or I've just started working for this small company. It's a small team of us, there's three or four of us, but it really feels good and I feel empowered and encouraged to share. And they listen to me. You don't necessarily have to take on board everything everybody says, but
Mhm.
there is a way that we can communicate even a no. So instead of saying there's no, that's crap, pardon the language, but you can say, excuse me, thank you so much for contributing. However, your idea doesn't align with where the company's headed, or, your idea
Yeah.
doesn't align with the project that we're working on. And that is going to make the other person feel much, much better. It's still a no, but
Mhm.
that doesn't tell me you don't matter. Who cares what you say? It tells me, oh, my idea wasn't in the right place. So maybe I can think about it more, or I can come up with something else next time and share. But what it does do, it doesn't shut down the communication. It does leave it open. So
Yeah.
yes, building culture takes time.
Well, and I think too, though. I think people. I think we underestimate the power of like that being heard carries. Like when people are heard, whether or not you go through with their idea or whatever, I think being heard for a lot of people is very important, especially in
Yeah.
the workplace, because a lot of people, unfortunately, in these type of environments we're talking about, they do just feel like a number. They do just feel like a pawn that's out on the front line to once that command, which is exactly what it is. It's a command that just gets trickled down. By the time it gets to the entry level guy or the person who's in the actual operations, it's been through several different people, and there's this fear that's went through this hierarchical level, and it's like it's just amplified by the time it gets to the person who's actually going to do the thing. You know what I mean? And so I don't know. I do think it's a culture, but I think the power of being heard is really misunderstood.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely. And I wanted to, sorry to cut you off, but I
you're good.
wanted to step in for when you said it trickles down, it does start with the top, be it a founder, a CEO, whoever makes the decision. If that person is very, uh, we say autocratic, so somebody who likes to have all the power and who likes to
Mm,
control things, then of course the person is going to hire people who are going to be listeners rather than, I tell you what to do, you execute, and that's it. You don't ask
yeah.
questions. And of course, then kind of that mentality spreads. So the person who does give directions, the commands, whatever the orders, whatever they are, uh, has to have this level of awareness that if I want my business to grow. And don't get me wrong, there are huge companies that work with that kind of culture.
Hmm.
And they do have people who want to work there. They have people who stay there despite the type of culture that they've created. But it has to start from the top. If your boss is not willing to see these things, if your boss is not willing to hear you out, no matter what you do with your team or anybody else below, it's never going to stick. You're going to be one of those maybe leaders who's awesome and people like working for you because you take care of your team, but it's not going to be the organization. It's going to be
Right.
you and your team. So it does have to start at the top. So, it's always, as yourself as an entrepreneur, this is something to think about. How open am I to feedback?
Mm.
If I am thinking about strategic growth, if somebody gives me a piece of advice, do I take it? Do I consider it? How do I respond to what's been given to me? Like I said, you
Yep.
don't have to take anything, but the way you respond to that tells a lot about who
Yeah.
you are and how you want to operate your business. So it does
Yeah.
have to start at the top. And as you grow your business, you constantly have to question yourself on, how am I communicating with people? Do I
Hmm.
really know what's going on? Am I in touch with my leadership team? You don't, of course, if you have 1,000 employees, you're not going to be, as a CEO, talking to every single one of them, but you
Right.
are going to be present and you are going to show that you care. And that's the way that we keep the good people.
Yeah. I think a big thing to be aware of with that is, it might be easy for us. When I say us entrepreneurs, if we're not getting feedback, we just assume that everything's good. But
True.
it could be that is your team so anxious to share feedback with you because they don't know how you're going to respond, which is not a good thing to be as a leader. Like I think you need to be open, but yeah, I think how you communicate with your team is very important, but I think also too how they communicate or do not communicate with you and why that is the case. Maybe if you got, I don't know, 5, 10, maybe 15% that don't communicate things, but the majority do. I think that's different from the
Yeah.
majority not communicating issues with you, because I think they should feel that they can communicate issues without you reacting, which I think is a big issue for a lot of us, is reacting to the thing in a certain way. But I want to go back to the top down thing for a minute, because I think authority is like, I think authority is a little bit different from like this fear that I'm talking about.
Oh,
I
yeah.
want to emphasize this because I just can't, it's like, it frustrates me because my experience working in some of these environments has been like everything that somebody does, including the top person sometimes, including the CEO, whoever this thing trickles down from, especially if there's a board or like, investors or somebody involved, it's almost like everything comes from a place of fear. Like this person says this thing or does this thing to what to it's almost like to please whoever is above them. You see what I'm saying? And so it just becomes this like snowball effect of everybody just trying to pacify their fear. And I don't know. I mean, I don't really work on that level with people of executive coaching, but I just can't see how that's sustainable. I just can't see how
It,
that's sustainable in the long run.
it's not. There's a high turnover in those businesses because people either stay quiet and everybody, at some point you have to figure out that things are not working, or there's a very high turnover. So eventually people start leaving. And if, as an organization, you don't go deep into it and see, okay, what's going on, then eventually you are going to fail. It's not sustainable to work that way. But one thing that they can do, for example, if you're starting out and you see that you get no feedback, and whenever you ask for feedback, everybody says, "No, everything is great." One thing you can do is actually go to another professional and say, "Hey, I want to check. I want to double check if this is really me doing everything great at this point, and if there's really nothing that we can improve on, or people are just not sharing with me." And
Hmm.
in that case, you can hire a coach, a trainer, a coach who does team coaching, for example, where they can explore if there are any underlying issues in an organization. Because sometimes people won't talk, like you said, to their maybe managers or bosses, but they will share things in confidence or in other ways. And so then that person knows how to take the information, share it with you without hurting anybody's privacy. So there's,
Yeah.
there's a way to go about it if you really want to find out whether you're on the right track or not. But there is this fear-based culture, and I agree with you. Authority is not the same thing as this fear-driven leadership. You can have so much authority and you can still be the friendliest, most likable person ever. So it definitely doesn't depend. It's not related to fear in any shape or form. You can be very,
Yeah.
very authoritative and still be, people would love you.
Right. And also too, while we're on this topic, I just want to say that I do have compassion and empathy for people in these spaces because I mean, you have to imagine, man, if there's like a board of investors or a group of people that own a company or whatever this like that owns the company, if they're looking at one person or two people or three people to run this entire organization, they're not looking at the thousand of employees. They're looking at
Yeah.
this one, two, or three people. That is an incredible amount of pressure. And so I understand where it's at. I don't know. I don't know that I think certainly being hired as a leader and sort of creating something where you become the leader are two different things also. And I know that's a whole different conversation, but it's just like the pressure that these people are in is probably incredible because if you have 1,000 employees, there's so many different levels to that, and I get that. But I don't know, man. That kind of leads me into the next point, which is like when we think about leadership, we think about things like authenticity, empathy, openness, your ability to, I guess, inspire your team or share the vision with your team. But I think one thing that's really overlooked is creativity. Is you need a sense of creativity on how you're going to maybe innovate or maybe push the company forward, because maybe not in these companies we're talking about, these huge companies, but like the small business level, if 10 employees or less, like everything is on that leader. Like the direction for the company is all on that leader. Like I know there's many, I think people think that just because you're a business owner, and just because money is a resource that you use to pay people and all this kind of stuff, I think people just assume that have a lot of money stacked up somewhere. But it's like, but it's like, man, a lot, it's just like, it's almost just like a job sometimes. Like, sometimes you're just living month to month or whatever it is. And, it's a lot of this stuff's on a treadmill. I mean, depending on, what you sell and how it's paid for. But it's like sometimes I think there's a lot of pressure. We keep going back to this word, but there's a lot of pressure with that leader, in the small business. But I think creativity is huge on how you move forward and how you innovate, how you can watch the market. I mean,
Yeah.
I think those
But
things are big.
also, it- the people you work with or the people you hire or your supporting structures, like I know masterminds have become incredibly popular nowadays because leaders, business owners, they need someone, especially if you're a solo founder. There's not many people, yes, you can talk to your employees about certain initiatives, certain strategies, but there's still a lot of that that you can't share with them because they're not at that level. They may not be interested in that. You can't share
Right.
it with your family. I mean, you can talk to everybody about it, but they won't have the understanding. So a lot of leaders are joining mastermind groups where you have
Mm,
other business owners who may be at the same level, higher, lower, it doesn't really matter, but they do understand what you're going through. They do
yeah.
understand the challenges, the issues, the needs, the wants. And so when you share something, there's someone that can relate and they can say, yeah, I
Right.
hear you. I've been there, or
Well,
I'm going through the same thing.
and that's a big thing too, man, because by definition, if you're going to be a leader of something, there's less leaders than there are people who are not. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And so I think a lot of people sometimes they have it's like a lonely journey almost because there's not really a lot of people that relate to sort of what you're trying to do or the position you're in. You mentioned your team. It's not really their responsibility or burden to carry that. I feel
yeah,
like, I mean, even like a best friend or a spouse or whatever, it's not really their responsibility either. And even if you tried to maybe explain to them, if they're not really in that space, it's really hard to explain like what that is like. So I think
yeah,
being in a room, whether it's a mastermind or a group or whatever of people who are on similar spaces, um, that's everything, man. Because I
agree.
think, like I said, by definition, you are sort of by yourself. You're the tip of the spear, so to speak, and it's really hard to find that connection with other people in that space.
Absolutely. I know for personal experience, when I wanted to start my coaching business, I went through the training. I'm ICF certified, which stands for International Coaching Federation. But so I got my
Yeah.
certification, and then I was like, all right, so I'm going to start a business. But
Yeah.
everybody I talked to, all the coaches that I knew at the time, they were either in-house coaches, which means they work for an organization as a coach. They're,
Yep.
in the company, or they work for an agency or coaching practice, and then they do coaching through that organization. So they weren't
Hmm.
kind of a standalone thing. And it was really challenging for me to find someone that I can ask questions or I can talk to and see, what is it that I need? How do I go about this? What are the things that I need to think about? So I did start reaching out to people who I didn't know at the time because I saw, I thought they did a good job as a coach. I saw that they ran their own thing. And so I started approaching them and asking, hey, would you mind having a cup of coffee or, just meeting online? And that's how I went about it. But to be honest, had I not done that, it would have been so, so, so hard because you're trying to figure it out on your own when there are
Hmm.
so many other people who've done this as well. So why not find that group that can help you and support you? And I'm sure, we can all give each other something that we need. We can all help each other. And then eventually I joined this accountability group, and we've been in touch for about 2 years now. And that really helps as well. So we're all running our own businesses. We're trying to grow as coaches. It really helps to see where each of us is at and what we're
Hmm.
doing, how the business is going. Eventually, we start sharing also about life and stuff like that. But I think as entrepreneurs, as business owners, it's really important for us to build these structures, the supporting structures around us that help us. It can be one person, like you said, it can be just a group meeting of some sort or a mastermind. Sometimes even training, we go as leaders, we want to grow professionally as well. So maybe you're going to go and take a training on sales or business growth or whatever. And then you
Hmm.
meet people there who are going through similar challenges. So that's another way to connect and see if maybe we can do more than just talk, during this training.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, man. There's so, gosh, I remember thinking about, I started my business in 2014. And I don't know when podcasts became a huge thing, but now I listen to a podcast a lot. I listen to different podcasts a lot. And I just feel like if I had some way to, I went to YouTube a lot just to learn different things, listen to different things. Read a lot of books at that time, but I don't know, man. I just think back. I think networking wasn't really something I did until like the halfway up to this point, like 5 year mark or whatever, 5.5 years, somewhere around there. Uh, and it was a game changer, like being in those environments, you know. Um,
Absolutely.
but then the business that I started, it was a landscaping business, which was already very demanding physically.
Very
Uh,
competitive too.
it's very competitive. Yeah, it's very competitive. But I don't know. It's but yeah, that's just something I think that's overlooked is that sort of the value in that connection to
I
other
don't know. I
people.
feel like I don't know in your part of the world, but sometimes I feel like we're thinking, oh, if I reach out to someone, they're not going to want to talk to me, or, who am I for them to spend their time on me? Or they're not going to want to share secrets or whatever. Uh, but I think that it's because we're stopping ourselves even before we reached out to someone and got a no. So we're
Yeah.
already preparing ourselves for a no, and we don't know. Maybe that person is super open and very willing to share and would love and welcome the opportunity. But I think there's a lot about that. Who am I going to talk to? Who am I going to reach out? There's these people that I know, but they're not going to want to talk to me anyway. You don't know
Right.
that. I mean, at least let them tell you they don't want to talk to you. Don't
Right. Yeah.
don't quit yourself before somebody else tells you we're not interested. So I think it's another big thing for us to work on our mindset because it takes courage. I think it takes courage to start your own business, whether it's an e-commerce one or you're just trying to sell something or you're trying to really build a corporation. It doesn't really matter. It takes courage to there because there's a lot of uncertainty. You can
Right.
read as much as you want, you can learn as much as you want, but the moment you start doing it just because it worked for somebody else,
Mhm.
it doesn't mean it's going to work for you. So there's a lot of that uncertainty. I don't know what the next step is. I don't know what's going to happen. The market as well, today everything is great. Tomorrow things may change. So there's a lot of the unknown that we're facing when we're starting our business. I really think even if you start something and it fails, it took a lot of courage to get to that place. So we
Yeah.
need to work on our mind and be mindful of how important it is what we say to ourselves, the way we
Right.
talk to ourselves, the way we motivate ourselves and encourage ourselves. Because often we're pretty good critics, but
Yeah.
we don't, how often do you tell yourself, Cody, you did a great job today. This was amazing. Whereas you're
Mhm.
very quick to say, "Oh, that sucked. You should have known better," you know?
Yeah. Well, God, there's so many things there, man. I think the self-talk is important. I think how you talk to yourself is obviously important, but the person who is willing to look at themselves and criticize how they could have done something better, I think that's going to show that person that they always can improve. Because the
Yeah.
person, I think the inverse, the person who looks at everything that they do and say this was great, this is okay, that person, I don't think there's going to be much improvement there, because you have to have the awareness. I mean, you just have to have the awareness and the humility. But you were talking about sort of this idea of feeling like people don't want to talk to you or whatever in that space. I remember back when I started my business, it wasn't like, I don't know, I just felt like these people were at a different level than me. Like if I went to a networking event, there were different people from different industries in there. Like I was the guy who was sort of, had a landscaping company, and just a couple hours before, I had a dirty shirt on, I was sweaty and dirty, and I just took a shower, and now I'm in this thing. And so I don't know, I felt like people didn't really want to, like I couldn't offer whatever level they were on. But as I was going through this journey, I realized that what makes you an entrepreneur is not being in those rooms and being, quote unquote, the successful person with a successful business. What makes you the entrepreneur is, like you said, taking that risk, putting yourself out there, because those people are only in those rooms. They're only successful because they did put themselves out there, because they put themselves out there, they took that risk, and they had the courage to go through with whatever it was they wanted to do. And so it's like, I mean, it's easy. And I tell people this a lot, because this is something that I really had to work through sort of in my journey, was, like you said, the mindset of it. Like you look at another person and you say, oh, well, this person's got it all figured out. They're successful, whatever it is. But that is only possible because they went through the same thing that you feel in that moment, about how you're not, you don't believe in yourself. You can't do it. These people have a talent or an ability that you don't have, whatever it might be for you. Getting through that, I think, is what makes you the entrepreneur, because you have to, you can't have one without the other. Like it's not like the success and you don't have that. The people who are
Yeah.
successful, they just found a way to make it through that.
I love that. Yes, I completely agree. There's that saying, I think I've seen it somewhere. Don't compare your level 2 to somebody's level 20. And it's really easy for us to see uh, when someone is successful and think, oh, it just happened. It didn't really just happen, because you don't know the
Yeah.
whole story. Who knows how many times they failed? Who knows what they had to go through to get to where they are right now? So I think if possible, if we can get to know that person, if we can get to ask them about their journey, there's so much that we can learn from that person or those people. But I agree, it really, I think it's very natural. We all do that. We start something and we look at someone who's super
Mm.
successful, whatever, be it a business or anything else, and we think, oh, I'm never gonna get there, or they, maybe they had this support and that support, or they started here and there. But I think we really need to take into consideration, yes, whatever their starting point was, it may have been a better position than yours, but they still had to work hard. Nothing, I believe, comes without any effort. So if we want to do whatever we want to do and be successful, we have to put in the effort. And for some, that's going to be huge. For some, it may not be that big, but you still have to work for it. It doesn't just come, it doesn't fall out of the sky.
Yeah. I was trying to look up something right here, and I am, for I don't know, for whatever reason, I'm signed out of my Perplexity account, which is it's similar to Chat GPT, but I use
Hmm.
Perplexity.
I'm
Um
familiar with it.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, I think what I'm thinking of is different from this. I was going to say confirmation bias. I think that's a little bit different from what we're talking about, but I do think I got to look that up because it's going to bother me. But I
Okay.
do think that like if we don't think we're capable of doing a thing, or if it's not meant for us or whatever, we're going to look for reasons to validate that belief, whether that belief is true or not. You know, and so like if we try to start a business or pursue a career or education or whatever, and we feel for whatever reason that it's not for us, I think we're going to try to, you know, pick and choose. Like we'll be completely oblivious to like the obvious positives, you know what I mean? But we'll look for things of why it might not work or why we're not the right person for it. And I think that's well, it's obviously a maybe a soothing mechanism, definitely some sort form of like self sabotage. But it's like, I don't know. What if we could just flip that? Like, yes, those things might be real. You know, if you want to be a professional basketball player and you're like 5'2", you know, I don't know. It doesn't mean you can't do it, but it's like, but look at the other talents that you have, the abilities that you have. Like, well, how could it work? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, again, I can't help but stress this, to go back to the courage and the resilience and the tenacity that it takes to make this work. That is an incredible source of power, really,
Yeah.
in any aspect
Yeah.
of life. You know what I mean? Like a person who can put themselves in that position and be around people that they feel like are more successful than them, quote unquote. That is an incredible trait, I feel like.
Yeah, we need to be open to learning really and growing. I mean, you can't expect yourself to know everything, nor should you. So it's we always are should be open to learning, whether it's running our business or just acquiring a skill that we want to have. It doesn't really matter, but we need to be open to learning. And when you say, we the way it is our mindset, it is our self-talk. If I'm convinced that I can do something, I'm gonna do my very best to make sure I try it and do it. If I'm convinced that something is not for me, then yeah, I'm not gonna I'm gonna find any and every opportunity that proves that I'm right, that I can't do it. And naturally though, we have this negativity bias, which is, our tendency to see the negative of something, which in a way is our brain kind of helping us stay safe and not get hurt. But we need to be aware of the fact that we do naturally, our brain is always going to scan for danger. That
Right.
comes from like the caveman time where any noise could be a predator trying to kill you, right? So the brain would always scan and think, okay, that is danger, that is not danger. You mind this, mind that. So naturally, when we get into new situations, we're always thinking, oh, but what if all of these negative things happen? Now we need to train our brain to say yes, that's a
Hmm.
possibility, but there's also this other thing that can happen. So it's like it's one of those things I think you see on social media all the time now. It's like, what if I fail? But what if I succeed? So, what if it's a great thing? So we do naturally lean into the negative aspect of things. So we really need to train our brain to say, yes, that's one of the options. But another option is for me to move forward, for me to do something great, for this to work, for me to succeed, stuff like that. It takes time. It's not easy, really, but it does take also repetition in the sense of you have to keep reminding yourself of that.
Let me
Did
while
you
you were
find it?
talking, yeah, I did find it. Let me show you. Let me show you. I have to share this. Because while you were talking earlier, I found it. Let me see. Let me know if you can see this right here. Can you see this?
It's load. Yes.
So I asked Perplexity, what is confirmation bias? It says confirmation bias is a cognitive bias where people tend to seek out, interpret, favor, or recall information in ways that confirm or support their existing beliefs or values. This bias often leads individuals to ignore or undervalue evidence that contradicts their preconceptions, resulting in a distorted view of reality and potentially poor decision making. It says based on search information, people more likely to look for information that supports their views and avoid information that challenges them. Um, it says, for example, someone who believes that a particular group is generally unreliable, they will notice and remember incidents that confirm this belief while disregarding those that contradict it. This bias often operates unintentionally. Human brains use it as a mental shortcut to process vast amounts of information more efficiently, although this comes at a cost of objectivity. It is more pronounced when dealing with emotionally charged or deeply held beliefs. Uh, it says it can be minimized by actively seeking out opposing viewpoints, critically evaluating all evidence, being aware of one's own potential for bias. So yeah, so confirmation bias, like we said, if you have that belief and then you sort of look for reasons to validate that, um, and I don't know. I mean, obviously that has its place. I think, like it said, the efficiency of the brain. We just simply don't have the brain power to look at every single detail of life
Yeah.
and analyze it. But when you're talking about this kind of thing, I think which is one thing that I tell people about identity anyways, is to validate your beliefs. You have to know where your beliefs come from.
Yeah.
And if it's your belief or if it's something that was instilled in you, which I think a lot, we have a lot of beliefs that were instilled in us. But yeah, I mean, I think just being aware of that, not that I think basically what it boils down to is if we have a belief about ourselves or about the world, we're going to be hyper sort of vigilant and sensitive to anything that sort of validates that belief. And I think
Mm.
we just need to be aware of that.
Yeah, I would add to that, as you said, a good thing, checking whether this is your belief or not. Another thing to check from time to time is it serving you? Because it
Hmm.
may be your belief, it may be something that you've built yourself for whatever reason at some point, but it stopped serving you again at some point, and we didn't stop to check in with ourselves and see, is this still helping me, or is it
Right.
actually making my life more difficult? And if it's helping me, fantastic. If it's making it more difficult, maybe I need to reconsider this, or see if there's another way or another perspective that I'm not taking into consideration.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. Um, we hit leadership pretty hard. I feel like we talked about that a good bit. Uh, what there were some other things that you were talking about in the intro, and I got so caught up on leadership that I missed them. Can you do like
That's
like a really quick recap
okay.
of some of
Yeah,
the things you do?
so yeah,
Because I
absolutely.
mean,
So I do.
there was something else I wanted to ask, and I forgot what it was now.
Well, I do work on communication skills. Let me just, I guess, list things that I do with people, and maybe that'll bring
What
back what you wanted.
did you say something about conflict resolution? Was that something that you
Yes,
mentioned?
I do. Yeah, I
Is
do a lot of training and workshops on conflict resolution and conflict management because it is a big thing. It goes under communication, just like public
mm,
speaking, just like delegating feedback. All of these things are really communication. Uh, but conflict management seems to be something very popular, and it's kind of like an evergreen topic, regardless of how big or small the business is. And it can also be for personal things. It doesn't necessarily have to touch on
yeah.
just business, but there are a lot of people we shy away from conflicts because it's uncomfortable, and so
Mm,
sometimes it's beneficial to shut up and process the information, but sometimes just leaving it out there or shoving it under the rug is not going to help.
yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. Anything you're curious about when it comes to
Well,
conflict resolution?
I am curious about that. There's just so many different ways to take that. I'm assuming if you work with somebody, conflict resolution is more in the business aspect, the business setting.
It
You
is.
know,
It is more, we usually start there because the coaching that I do is usually professional. So it's mostly
okay,
business coaching in the sense of not telling you how to run your business, but from a
right.
professional perspective, right? So we do enter coaching sessions usually discussing professional, but that inevitably leans into personal as well from time to time. So usually a person, I haven't met many people who are very comfortable with conflict in their personal life and completely uncomfortable in professional life or vice
Yeah.
versa. It may be easier to get into a conflict in one of these. So, I don't know, maybe you find it fine to get into conflict with a person you trust or personally, but then you wouldn't do it at work. But it's
Hmm.
it's never either or. So that kind of flows from one into another. Um, but yeah, it's usually the problem stems from the fact that there's a misunderstanding. That's
Yep.
the base of most conflicts. Like I said something, or you heard something completely different. We didn't address it together, and now it's a problem.
Hmm.
That's, I
Yeah.
know it's super simple, but this is like the very, very, very simplified version, but it's what it boils down to. I didn't check with you to see if you understood my message the right way. You didn't really share with me how you heard it, and so we kind of went our separate ways. And then there's this thing that stayed in between that
Right.
nobody addresses.
No, I'm just thinking about, like all the different ways I think people handle conflict like that. Like whether it's whether it's professional or, personal. Um, I don't know. I just feel like there's so many different. I think there's people who are maybe comfortable with it, and there's people who are not comfortable with it. And when I say comfortable with it, I think there's certain people who they like lean into it versus lean away from it. And there's obviously so the personality spectrum. Let me see. Ocean a there's an acronym ocean, so there's like different traits, and I think agreeableness is one of them. Openness to experience, conscientiousness, agreeableness, extroversion, neuroticism, I think are the five. And so if a person is very low in agreeableness, they're probably going to be it's going to be easier for them to have conflict, or at least talk about conflicts with people or things or whatever it is. uh and I don't know, man. I think it's like all a unique balance, because you don't want to be so agreeable that you can't get your point across, especially in the professional setting. And you also don't want to be so disagreeable that
Yeah.
people can't come come and talk to you. So it's like a balance. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. The one thing that I've noticed with many, many people is how we perceive conflict, because usually we think of it as arguing, you know? So I don't want to fight with you, so I'm not going to start this argument. But what it really, conflicts are good. We need to have conflicts because it's just a clash of opinions and experiences. So, but if we see it that way, then we can react to it completely differently. So if
Yeah.
I see conflict as, oh, I don't want to argue with you, so I'm just going to walk away, then I'm not very likely to get back to that conversation because I don't feel comfortable fighting with someone over something.
Right.
But if I see it as, okay, you have your point of view, I have mine, or I want to do certain things this way and you want to do it the other way, we have to do it together. So we have to come up with something that works for both of us. Then it's more of a conflicts are a way for us to grow because we are trying to walk and talk through an issue that we have.
Mhm.
So it takes a lot of listening. It takes a lot of communication in the sense of, okay, Cody, this is what I think, this is how I feel, this is what this thing means for me. How about you? And then you'd share your thoughts and opinions. And then we'd say, okay, well, in ideal case scenario, how would you resolve this? This is what I would like to see as an outcome. Is there a way that we can find the middle ground? If we don't find the middle ground, what is it that you would like to see? Does that work for me? What is it that I would like to see? Does that work for you? But it's
Mhm.
really trying to figure out how we can move forward together with something that we're both okay with. We don't have to love it, but we have to be okay with it.
Right.
And so, conflict, the point of a conflict is to walk out of it with a set of actions that we can apply and see if that
Mhm.
works and helps solve the problem. But
Yeah.
usually we see it as we're going to fight, it's going to end nowhere, there's going to be a lot of swearing, a lot of yelling, so we're not going to get into it. Yes, sometimes that happens, but those are not what we call constructive conflicts.
Right.
That's just an argument. Conflicts can and should be very constructive because we clashed for some reason.
Mhm.
Now we need to figure out why we clashed and how we can move forward from there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. And that's kind of one of the reasons I was saying earlier that like creativity is so important for leaders, because I think, the bigger your team gets, you're going to have really a unique relationship and a unique communication style with each person that's on the team. Like you're not, I mean, if there's 10 plus people, or even if there's not, if there's like five, I think the way you communicate and have these conflict resolutions with each person is different. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
the person is different. And so it's almost like you had to be like a social, what is it, like a social chameleon, with the people that's like, I mean, because you just have to, I feel like, communicate in a way that's going to be conducive to whatever the goal is. And we were talking about identity earlier and like beliefs and all this kind of stuff. What's crazy, man, is like, it's like sometimes when I think when people have a conflict they're trying to resolve, it's almost like their idea or their belief is being challenged. And sometimes I feel like they're so attached to that belief that it's almost like you're challenging them. You know what I mean? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
if you see this a lot, well, you see this a lot out in the world today, but it's like
Yeah.
there's an idea or a belief, and then one person challenges that, and the person literally feels like it's themselves, like they're challenging them because they're just so attached to this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It
And
gets very personal.
yeah, Yeah, and so I don't know. I think that's just something to be aware of. But yeah, I mean, as far as like resolving the conflicts, how you communicate with one is going to be different than. And I've heard like I've heard parents say that too. Like parents say that about children. Like one child is completely different from the other, and whatever. But it's interesting, man, because it takes like I think as the leader you have to be aware of that, and
Yeah.
which means that sometimes you yourself also have a communication style, so
Yeah.
whatever your communication style might be, you're going to have to alter that, or do something to that to have a conducive conversation, productive conversation.
Yeah,
um
yeah, yeah, I agree. You have to be aware of your team's communication style, so each person has their own way.
yeah.
Some you may be more comfortable with, some you may not. So, depending on what your communication style is. For example, I like to talk through things. That helps me.
Mhm.
So if I'm upset, if I'm anxious, I ideally would have someone to share this with and kind of talk it through. I don't necessarily
Right.
need advice, but I like to talk it through. So if I have a team member, a partner, a friend, whoever, who likes to kind of process it in silence and not share, we're going to have an issue because I'm going to notice that there's something that's going on. I'm going to want to hear what it is, and they're not going to want to share because it's not their way to go about it.
Hmm.
So we have to be familiar with, okay, well, what works for the other person? And then I think we both have to step a little bit out of our comfort zones. I don't think
Right.
it's fair only for the leader to, as you said, to be a chameleon and adjust to everything. But then the leader does need to show initiative. So, if I'm a team leader, it is up to me to come and say, hey, Cody, I noticed that for the past week you've been very unsettled or very anxious. Is everything okay? And so, you can say, oh, you know what? Thank you for asking, and then kind of go on full story and
Right.
share. Or you may be the kind of person who says, yes, sorry, I'm going through something. I will share when I'm ready, or if it affects work, please let me know, but I have to process it on my own, or whatever it is. So,
Hmm.
and then depending on what you give me as the information or what you share with me, I can see, okay, do I need to keep pushing or do I step back? What do I do
Yeah.
with this? But and so I shared two most common ones, but there's all shades in between of how people can respond to that question.
Yeah, the man, that emotional intelligence is so important. Like just being able to pick up those cues or whatever. And that's what I'm saying, man. Like I think that like interacting with different people in different ways to whatever is going to be beneficial to them. But like you said, also getting your point across that you're not sacrificing whatever the message is or whatever. Um, yeah, it's a science almost. It's like it's just really difficult sometimes to like navigate though. At least it
It
is for
is.
me.
It is one of the hardest things I had to do as a leader, as a manager, for example, is when I know that there's something personal going on with a team member and I
Hmm.
know that affects that they won't be able to do the work 100%, I still have to get them to get the work to the deadline.
Right.
So being able to balance that of I know you're going through a hard time, but you still need to do this because a lot of other people depend on your work, or what you do then leads to the next phase or whatever. So knowing how to navigate those conversations without having the person feeling like they don't matter, or
Hmm.
what they're going, especially if they share something personal with you
Right.
and then you're like, well, who cares? You still need to do what you need to do and deliver. That is definitely not a way to go. I'm not saying you should be completely lenient though. So sometimes, being super friendly doesn't help either, because then it's really hard to set that boundary between, yes, but I'm still your supervisor. I'm still the person in charge. So I still have to get some things done, because as leaders, we have to constantly balance that, the KPIs, the goals, the metrics, and everything that we have to deliver, because this is how we show whether we've made progress or not.
Hmm.
And then on the other hand, the people, because it's the people who are working to get that
Right.
to a done. So but those were really hard moments for me. If I know that someone is going through something rough personally and they are not delivering, getting them to deliver despite that is really a challenge without hurting them or making them feel um, not seen, heard, or irrelevant.
Yeah. No. Yeah. For sure. Uh. So before we close this thing out, I'm curious, do you and this is just like right off the top of my head, do you have like what you would claim to be the top 3 most important traits of leadership? I know we talked about a lot of different things and maybe we've already touched on them, but I'm curious, like what do you think
Oh,
is like to make a good leader? Like what would a good leader have or have to work on or improve or areas they would be good in?
I would say it's hard to choose top three. Um, definitely emotional intelligence,
Mhm.
because I think it really helps you see things. You may act on them or may not, but you see them and then you
Right.
process how you want to go about it. And I just want to make a distinction between emotional intelligence and empathy. Just because someone is emotionally intelligent, it doesn't mean they empathize with everything. It just
Right.
means that we're noticing certain changes in behavior, emotions of others, the way they show up to work, and we're aware of how they come to work. But it doesn't mean that we have to follow everything. Um, so definitely emotional intelligence. Another thing I would say is being willing to grow and develop personally. So
Mm.
me as a person, I need to be open to my own growth and development, because then that way I learn and grow and then I change so I can help others change as well. Um, and I would say listening. I think
Mm.
active listening is super important. And I know we talk a lot about it these days, and
Yeah.
everybody talks about what active listening is really about, but it is giving this other person a chance to share, notice, being present, noticing the cues, not having 1,000 tasks and thoughts in your mind as you're talking to a person, just really hearing them and making them feel heard. I think is really important, because if you notice, like, if you've ever talked to someone who's really good at what they do, they're super successful, they're very,
Mhm.
high up and whatever, you'll probably, if you take a closer look at that conversation, you'll notice that you did most of the talking. Usually they're the ones who ask questions and just listen,
Yeah.
and then they comment. So I think that's those three, I guess, if I had to choose three, those would be, so emotional intelligence, willingness for us to learn and grow, and then being a good listener.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. That's a pretty good list. Yeah. I think those are very important. Um,
Thank you. I tried. It's not easy. I think there's so many things that, we're you mentioned authenticity at the beginning. We're all a separate person. No matter how similar we are, no one is ever going to be just like you. So, there's
right.
one Cody, there's one me, with my unique set of abilities, characteristics, features, whatever. But then we need to learn about ourselves, know what our strengths are, know where we are lacking, and then trying to build and grow from there.
Mm. Yeah. No, I agree. Is there anything else that we didn't touch on that you wanted to get to?
There's one thing I like to leave people with, and it's kind of
Okay.
became kind of became my motto as I was growing. So I usually share with people, if there's, when it comes to building confidence and just moving forward and doing what you want to do, if there's one thing you can trust about yourself, that's your ability to learn.
Mm.
Because I think this is really important for us to acknowledge this. We are where we are because we are able to learn and pick up
Right.
new things. And if you can look at it the basic way, like we learned how to walk, how to talk, how to socialize, these are the things that come naturally to us. So this ability for us to learn is very present in each and every one of us. So if there's one thing that you can trust yourself about, it's that one ability. So that's kind of what I like to leave people with. So trust that.
Okay. Yeah, no, I like that. So I was going to ask you if you could share one of the most important lessons you ever learned. I don't know if that's what you would share or not.
Oh, I would. I'd have
I
to
just
think about it.
Yeah, it's,
I
it's something I ask everybody. It could be from your personal life if you're comfortable sharing it, or your career. What do you think is one of the most valuable lessons you've ever learned?
um I would say just the confirmation that stepping outside of your comfort zone is scary. Even though I keep talking about this, and as a coach, you always share these things. But for me, it's still always, every time I'm in a new situation, I'm so uncomfortable and I
Mm,
so want to just crawl back
yeah.
into whatever I'm comfortable and not move forward. But one thing that I've learned, especially since starting my business, is um, if you don't try, you don't know. And I know it's very generic, but uh, every time I dared, I did learn a lot. Sometimes it
Mm,
was success, sometimes I failed, but I did learn a lot. So I think it's really, for me, the biggest lesson is that there's a reason it's called comfort zone,
yeah.
and there's a reason we need to keep expanding it. So I would say that's one of the lessons that I learned. It's not super personal, but it really helped me uh, go through my life and business. Because in my life, I noticed every time I did something that I didn't feel comfortable with, but I did it, it
Mm,
really helped me grow. And so I'm trying to do that now in business as well. You know, this whole maternity thing that's coming up is scary, but I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot. So,
yeah.
I guess I learned to welcome uncomfortable situations, no matter how hard they are.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that because again, going back to what we talked about earlier, I mean, all these great things are only possible because you got out of the comfort zone, and
Yeah,
it's almost like, man, sometimes it feels like that is like 80 or 90% of the journey is that process of getting out of that and growing into who you need to be. I don't know. I think a lot of situations in life, I think we grow into the person we need to be for. I mean, nobody is, you're never who you are at the beginning that you need to be at the end. You know what I mean? Like you
yeah,
grow into that person.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I think that's only possible when you do step out of that comfort zone,
Yeah,
you
but
know?
it's scary. I know it's scary. It's
Yeah.
really, you know, your heart is pounding. You really don't want to do this. You'd
Hmm.
much rather stay where you are, no matter how much you want to change. It's like, but it feels good. It's comfortable. I'm
Yep.
okay. But then there's this nagging voice saying, no, you're not okay. Otherwise, you
Hmm.
wouldn't even be thinking about it. And so I think trusting ourselves with the courage that we have, the ability to adjust to whatever comes our way
Yep.
is a big thing. And it doesn't have to be, I just want to clarify that as well. You don't have to aspire to be, I don't know, the president of Mars. You can you can be a loving parent, a partner, a business owner, a friend. If that's success for you, if that's something that inspires you and fuels you, that's what you want to be. That's who you want to be. And that's absolutely fine. If you want to be a millionaire, fantastic. Then go and be a millionaire. But the success is different for all of us.
Yeah.
So whatever it is for you, it's yours and it's absolutely fine. It doesn't have to be according to society because you're the one who's living it. So I just wanted to make sure that, to remind people of that. We don't all have to aspire to be the next, I don't know, Steve Jobs, if that's not something that you want to be.
Yeah. But I think though, I think anything that we try to do or should do, or that we're driven, or, that we're, that we have a sort of a desire to do, whether it's have a family or be a multimillionaire CEO or whatever it is. Everybody has a different path, but I think whatever that thing is the discomfort that you feel when you start that thing is proportional to how important that thing is to you. And it's like the comfort zone is really just a cycle that you're caught up in, because being fulfilled, I think, is way more valuable and fun and feels better than being comfortable, but
Agreed.
you can only be fulfilled, like I said, once you get outside that comfort zone. And I think too, like some people, I think everybody's comfort zone is different. So if a person wants to be a, multimillionaire CEO, their comfort zone and their path is going to be much different from somebody
Yeah.
who doesn't put that as their priority and puts maybe family as their priority. But I think the discomfort of getting out of that comfort zone and pursuing that path is going to be sort of the same experience. At least it's going to be that experience for that person. You
Yeah.
know what I
I
mean?
mean,
Like,
yeah, look back at, even yourself. If when I look at where I was 5 years ago, even when I look at where I was a year ago, I've changed. I've
right.
grown. Now I have, maybe a set of new skills that I haven't had before, or a little bit of knowledge that I didn't have before. If I compare myself to my 20-year-old self, it's
Yeah.
a completely different story. So we grow, we change over time if we want to. We can stay
Hmm.
the same if we don't want to do anything about ourselves, but then it's a choice you made. But
For sure.
the people, you've grown. Inevitably, life makes you grow. So if you just don't believe it, look at where you were 5 years ago, and then write it all down, and then look at the list. And I'm sure
Yeah.
there's going to be a lot of things on the list. And I'm not talking about big things, even smaller
Hmm.
ones, like what you learned, who you are, who you hang out with. If your marital status changed, like if you're married now, maybe you weren't married before, so what does that mean now? You have a new set of friends, you move to a different state, different country. All of these things, they're
Yep.
changes, and none of them came just like that. So,
Right.
magic wand, boom, you're there. It took
Yeah.
time.
That's something else I tell people too, man, is that, success might be different from what you think it like when you actually achieve that step, whatever that is, it might look different than what you think it's going to look. And I don't think we need to be so attached to, this vision. I mean, I think pursuing a vision is obviously important, but we don't need to be attached to what we think it might be because we don't want to miss it when it happens.
Yeah,
I mean, it might look different. You're exactly right. You think about 5 years ago or 10 years ago where you were at and where you're at now, and man, I mean, you might actually be surprised. Like, just I think sometimes taking a step back and just realizing, like, okay, maybe I'm not where I want to be, so I'm going to keep trying to be that person, which is a good thing. But like, have some gratitude and appreciation and some pride in yourself for being where you are, because
yeah,
if you're on that path, you're not going to be in the same place. And
yeah,
so,
yeah,
yeah, I think that's incredibly valuable.
yeah.
But
Yeah,
look, I got
sorry,
to
we
get out.
kind of went.
No, yeah, we're
Sorry,
good.
we
I,
went
I
much
just,
longer
I,
than.
I got to get off. I got another call coming up in a couple minutes. But do you have social media? Anything you want to shout out while you're here? A website or anything?
Yeah, the easiest way to find me, and the place where I'm most present, is LinkedIn. So I'm sure my name is going to be somewhere on the podcast, but it's Snezana, Snezana, Djuric. You'll find me. You'll see my bright face on LinkedIn, and that's the best way to connect. I'm there most of the time. You can check out my website, of course. It's snowation.com. So it's Snowation. And you can find a little bit more about me there. But I would highly suggest LinkedIn as a connection point.
Okay, great. Well, listen, it's been great talking to you. It's been a really good conversation. I do
Yeah,
appreciate
I
it.
love it.
Um, if you can hang out for just a second, I'll explain to you how I upload this thing. But it's been a really good conversation with you today.
Thank you, Cody. It's been a pleasure too. Looking forward to more.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey guys, I appreciate you tuning in today. If you enjoyed this episode, you can find more content at Pure Wisdom Podcast. This is on Facebook, Instagram, Rumble, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple and Google Podcasts. There you can like, share, subscribe, and we will see you next time. This episode is brought to you by Excel Coaching Academy. Hey guys, I'm really excited to let you know that I started a mindset coaching business. So what I want to do with this business is I want to help entrepreneurs, business owners, salespeople, leaders, and fitness enthusiasts or athletes develop the right mindset to increase revenue, improve business or performance, and overcome the challenges needed to become the best version of themselves. You can get more information about this by emailing info@excelcoaching.academy.